Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live, coming every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesdays, one of my favorite days. I'm here with the founder and CEO of Startups.com, co-host of this show, and all around just a great dude. Will is here. And Will, every Tuesday, we do pitch decks. And I'm going to start right out of the gate with this invitation. Will, invite everyone to send us your decks. What will we do for founders if they send us their decks?
We'll be honest and blend it with kindness. And Ed, I was thinking about that, the whole kindness part. When people send us their decks and we say, hey, we'll be kind about it, they're like, no, I want you to be like, pull no punches. And I'm like, I can be honest about what you should change without making you feel bad. Why is it one or the other? Why can't I make you feel good and make a change at the same time? And I think that like when people go and they do pitch competitions or they go and they pitch to investors, there's this thing that like we should attack the founder for having something wrong on their pitch deck. And I'm like, why? I'm trying to help that person out. I'm not trying to attack them. So when you send in your deck, we will not pull punches in the form of if there's something wrong, we'll say it. You're going to see it in this deck review, but we're going to respect the fact that you're a founder and that you're going to need to make some changes. That's okay.
Will, I'm curious. Let's go off the beaten path just for a moment here. How many times have you given well-intentioned pitch deck advice and the founder has taken it all the wrong way because of like insecurities and it feels tense, right, to be in that situation?
I've been advising founders for decades. And one of the things that I learned early on from another advisor was never tell people what to do. Never tell people what to do, particularly founders. And so my thing is, I will not tell you what to do. I'll say, here's another data point. Your job is to decide what to do, right? And because of that, if I say, hey, here's something I see that I think is wrong on your pitch deck, that's just data. You can choose to react to it. You can choose to ignore it. I don't care. My job is to give it to you. Now, I think when the person giving the advice, the mentor, gets too personally attached to their advice, it becomes more of a directive. It's not advice anymore. It's I'm telling you what to do, kind of like a parent tells the child. And if you don't do it, you're personally offending me. I look at that and say, if you don't do it, that's on you. I mean, I hope it works otherwise, but that's on you.
Well, I've had founders say to me as recently, I don't know which advice to follow. Sometimes I listen to you talk, sometimes I listen to Will talk, and you guys contradict each other. And they admit to me it's frustrating sometimes. What's your response to that? I'll tell you what I shared in just a moment, but what's the general response?
I get that too. I get that. Hey, Ed told me something totally different. I'm like, good. The last thing you want is like only one version of advice coming from anybody. Like, well, what do I do? I'm like, that's up to you. And I'm not trying to be cryptic about it. I'm saying if Ed suggests your total addressable market should look like this and Will suggests it should look like this, you're a CEO. It's your job to figure out what advice to take from the people around you. And within that, make that decision. What do you say?
There's no formula. There's no one size fits all. There's no silver bullet. And I tell people, Will has raised millions of dollars with his pitch decks. I've raised millions of dollars with my pitch decks. Others do pitch decks completely different. Like you said, they've raised trillions of dollars doing the opposite sometimes of what we advise. And so, it's just a bunch of tools. Learn what fits you and roll with it.
Right. And you're right. I always open up by saying, just to be clear, before I give this workshop or this speech or whatever I'm about to say, people have raised trillions of dollars without my help. So clearly this isn't the only way to do it, right? I just take that off the table. By the way, Ed, what I wouldn't give earlier in my career as a founder, when I was getting advice, to just get like some basic self-awareness from the advisors who were giving me advice, to be able to say, guess what? Maybe what I'm telling you may not work for you, or I may be wrong. Just like that would have been so useful because Ed, early, I took everything at face value. When an advisor would say, hey, you should do this, I just dropped everything. I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this. And that was a giant mistake. I didn't realize how little advisors knew. Not their domain knowledge, but like their ability to tell the future.
I also wish that advisors, and I try to do this, and it happened today, would timestamp themselves in terms of that context. Like I had a founder say, I was told to do a demo video like Dropbox and I'd be able to raise millions and that's the way to do it. And my response is, well, when did Dropbox raise money? It was a different time. Those are the glory days. It's completely changed now. And I'm not raising in today's market the same way. I can share the principles. And that's the approach I like to take is that startups, everything is always changing all the time, especially when it comes to raising capital.
Well, and I think for a lot of advisors, our whole bias fundamentally is our own experience. And one of the things that's interesting, Ed, about the way you and I get to kind of share and translate so much advice is we get to see a massive number of different stories and paths, right? So at any given time, I'm looking at dozens and dozens of founders' stories and paths and watching all the different outcomes. that happen. So when I give someone some advice, I say, hey, my personal experience is X, but having watched a whole bunch of other founders do it differently, here's also the option for Y. And I try to give them more than one bias. And I think it works fairly well.
I think so too. Reminder for everyone, send us your pitch decks. Doesn't matter where stage you are. If you're watching this on YouTube, we prioritize members of Startups.com. If you're a member with us, you're joining us, thank you so much. We put your decks on priority and we'll always send you feedback. Doesn't have to be a video review. Some founders want me and Will to kind of bat it around and talk about it. But if you're out there in the YouTubes, just send it to us anyway. We're here to help the entire startup ecosystem. Come one, come all, and send us the pitch decks and we'll let you know how to get that done. This is part, Will, of our pitch competition series. You can receive, founders out there, $5,000 advisory and investor relations package. And how you do that, it's going to be selected by our committee. Will is one of the managing partners on the committee, as am I. So we're looking at pitch decks and it's based on idea, deck, team, traction. And all you have to do is notify us to apply. And Will, these days, I've just been very straightforward in telling founders because I'm not incentivized the same way. So someone says, do you think my deck can win this competition and get attention from your investors? And I will just say, you're still needing some improvement in this space, that space. That's kind of what we do. Will, what are you telling founders in terms of, hey, these are chances to raise?
You mean raise in general,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So the terminology you use, you have a better than 0% chance of raising, which I think is important. What I try to explain is that every fundraise is totally unique. I think when people tend to think about raising, they tend to think about it like when we apply for credit. Is my credit score good enough to get a car loan, right? And if I just pass these thresholds, money will happen, which in this case has nothing to do, right? You could do everything right. You could have the perfect pitch deck, you could have traction, et cetera, and you just don't meet the right investors that give a shit about what you just did. Conversely, you could have squat. You could have a terrible pitch deck. Wouldn't recommend it. You could have a terrible pitch deck, but you happen to have the right idea that people are investing in and you meet the right person at the right time and you pick up an investment. I've been on both sides of that equation. It's not as simple as check the boxes and funding happens. It's no different than relationships. Hey, if I just go on this many dates, will I get married to my dream person? Probably not. Probably not. You're probably going to go out and meet tons of people and they're all going to suck. And you're still going to be wondering, how do I do it? It's not that simple.
And to optimize these chances, we'll do your investor relations, but there's 2 points, and you already mentioned this. One, we get the data and we get to see how investors are responding today. And this is a little preview. Right. We got some great announcements. We're actually putting all that data into an AI database. So this database can learn and start to match and share with you. So we get that data. So you got to take advantage of that. But then also, one of the things that we also do is we encourage you to leave no stone unturned and contact friends, family, associates, warm investors, warm connections. Contact the ones cold out of our database. Continue your own research, and let's optimize you to meet everybody and anybody because you never know when you're going to make that one connection that totally breaks it open for you.
Yep, agreed.
Let's take a look at the pitch deck coming up. Q&A box. And the chat is there for you. So at any point in time, for those of you joining us, thank you so much. As always, love to have the live audience, and it gets lively at times. We appreciate it. Feel free to challenge us, ask us any questions, use the Q&A box, and we're going to make sure that we prioritize it. We have Jen lurking in the chat, making sure things get prioritized. Will, today, we are going to look at a CPG deck, and CPG stands for Consumer Packaged Goods, everyone. The principles are the same in many instances, but it's a little bit different, and I just want to throw that context out there. Will, what do you need everybody to know out there in how to look at the difference between a CPG deck and, let's say, a SaaS platform?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is for consumer packaged goods, it is a very specific category. And I think when people who have one of these things, and we tend to think of consumer packaged goods as something that will typically sit on a store shelf somewhere. Not always exclusively, but that's often the category it fits in. When it comes to investors, there are a much smaller universe of investors that invest in CPG, that invest in, say, software. And a lot of people getting into this are like, well, why? There's more products on a shelf than there are software. Maybe. But from an investor standpoint, the path to be able to scale a software company and get the margins to be able to get an exit, an IPO, et cetera, is very specific. CPG all over the map. Huge capital requirements. You've got inventory, you've got manufacturing, you've got a different level of marketing, et cetera. It's a very difficult business to build and scale. So there are fewer investors that have that expertise, know how to do it, and are willing to put it in the cash. When it goes right, it goes so right, because it's also very public. But it's a very difficult business to get funded. So we definitely dial in with the pitch deck to be able to say, we really got to speak to these investors.
And that's what I'd like to say to this founder here. Just remember, CPG is in a different category. It's its own category, and once again, can be very profitable. You look at some of these CPG companies that are doing like unicorn types of valuations. Just understand that the dynamic is a little bit different, and your typical startup software investor is not going to be interested. It's not a knock against you. Just understand that not all investors are the same. That's it, right?
Yep.
All right. So we've got a cover page here, and we've got Meddlesome for hair that fights back. We got the back of a lady whose hair, I guess it's fighting back. What do you think about this cover?
So at the very least, I like that it's contextual. And for those of you that have watched these videos before, we're all over the map on these intro slides, right? It's not like every time it's so obvious. More often than not, when we look at just the intro slide, which a lot of people think, oh, it's just a throwaway, it's just a cover page. No, it's the only slide that everyone is going to see.
Right.
And what it needs to do is it needs to tell me exactly what the product is. Okay. So for hair that fights back, that's a tagline. I need to know specifically that this is an anti-hair frizz ointment. I don't know why.
Sure. We're clearly not the target audience, Will.
I'm clearly not the target demo. My hair does not fight back. I just wanted to stay where it is. But anyway, my point is, I want the verbiage for this title slide to just be highly specific. This is what the product is, because it's the only slide people are going to see. And I want them to know going in exactly how to have their minds prepared for this.
Yes, totally. I agree 100%. Let's take a look. The problem slide, 66% of women globally report frizz as a major hair concern, fueling a $132 billion global frizz control market. Yet most products overpromise, underdeliver, and leave consumers frustrated by short-term, inconsistent results.
Okay. It's not wrong, but it's not good. Okay. So, and this comes up a lot. And I want to pause there because I want to go back to what we said a moment ago. Me saying it's not wrong, but it's not good. That's not a criticism. This isn't me trying to like oversell the idea of being kind. It's saying, okay, I see the raw clay that's there. Let's shape it up a little bit. Okay. Here's where I immediately, my sensors go off and I say, I'm concerned. Ed, can you throw the slide back up for us? Ed, exactly how many people are 66% of women globally?
That's where I'm lost, because I don't even know what the total percentage of people, let's say 66% of 7 billion. Is that really my market? So I have to do the calculation in my mind. So I know that you're getting to, let's just be very specific how many women this is.
In sort of who cares how many there are if we know they're spending 132 billion. So
good point.
I would say women spend $132 billion on controlling hair frizz. I'm not wordsmithing here. I'm just saying that's the concept. So I want to open there. It doesn't matter that it's 66%, because I want you to understand a couple things, and this is audience, et cetera, in the founder. When we're talking about who this affects, all we really care about is the dollar value. When we say 66%, never use a percentage by itself, because most people are going to have no idea what that's a percentage of. And if 66% of 100 people is 66, just tell me it's 66 people. But more importantly, what I'm trying to get to is the dollars on the table.
Yes.
Right? How much money is being spent or lost, won or lost, I should say, on this problem. So if you say women are spending 132 billion or whatever the number was on this problem, we're good. We don't need to talk about percentage of women or anything else like that. But that's not actually my biggest concern about this problem statement. Ed, it says, yet most products overpromise, underdeliver, and leave consumers frustrated. Pause right there. What does that actually mean, Ed? What are they? I know you don't know. This is a rhetorical question. What are most products overpromising? What aren't they delivering?
Right.
Here's the problem. The founder knows exactly what this means, but they forgot to tell their audience. And because of that, because the audience doesn't know what any of those things actually mean, because they don't have context, the problem statement falls flat. Your thoughts?
Exactly. As soon as I read this, I just automatically assume this is the opinion of the founder. It's the same way of people saying, so industry is broken. Hollywood is broken. Hollywood is recycling ideas and movies suck and it's terrible. And I go, well, last time I checked, Hollywood's still making billions of dollars. And I think a lot of people don't think that's a problem. So unless you're giving me something substantial to actually define and prove out that there is a problem here, I'm going to dismiss this as it might not be the problem that you're thinking it is. Or maybe it is, like you said, Will, it's clear in your mind, but I don't know because I can't read your mind.
You bet. So if we're saying that women are spending 132 billion on frizz, okay, on anti-frizz, then the first thing we have to say is what specifically are they trying to achieve with this product? That it's in what happens? Like, what's the consequence here? They use it, and we could say, but within an hour, the original problem always recurs.
Right.
Right.
That's very clear.
Also, not that it's necessary, but this feels like a good opportunity to show a before and after frizz, right? Like, this is what a woman is trying to achieve. And by noon, this is what her hair looks like.
Right.
Again, Ed, this is the ad guy in me coming out, which always, it seems to be coming out a lot more in all these pitch deck reviews. But this is a because it's CPG, great opportunity for a visual to be able to see it. There's also another side of this, and I want to make sure this comes out right. The investor market's a lot of guys, right? It just is. And with that, we can't automatically assume that they're going to understand what frizz means to a woman's hair the way a woman does. And Ed, you and I have talked about this before, where when you're going out to the investor population, there's a lot of stuff that group just doesn't know that you have to be very explicit about.
You have to educate. And I wanted to call that out as well, Will. You bring up a very good point. If all this founder did was present to women investors who've experienced this problem, slam dunk, right? And more power to you. If you can find those investors, that's all you present to, it's going to be great. But most likely the same way that you may be presenting to people about a cybersecurity startup and a solution, because we know it's a major problem, but they're just not technically knowledgeable about cybersecurity. The onus is on you as the founder to educate the investor, because, Will, right away, you know what happened with me? I look at this and I go, $132 billion just to control frizz. I started to doubt it, and that's because the founder's not really helping me understand exactly what's going on.
There's two parts to it. One is understanding the mechanics of what the person was trying to do, in this case, control hair frizz. But the other part is understanding what's breaking down. When I use a frizz, anti-frizz product, what isn't happening? In other words, it doesn't last long enough. It doesn't control the frizz at all. It can't. It only works for this amount. Is control. There's a lot of ways that the current products could be failing, but we really haven't demonstrated them. And I think that's a big problem. The other part of it is, what's the consequence when the product doesn't work to the audience? Not leaving that out there is a big issue. For example, if it's basically saying that it's leaving women frustrated, unconfident, there's a whole bunch of really visceral emotions that we can bring to the surface when this product doesn't work, that I think help tell the story.
On top of which, I'm just pontificating here. And by the way, we're really trying to work this deck over. And for all of you out there, an investor's never going to do this. They're just going to say, okay, moving on next, right?
Yep.
But for me, if it's short-term inconsistent, then maybe the way to couch this is you have to spend $132 billion because the current products only last 1 month and they have to keep buying the product because it's inconsistent in short term, or maybe it's weekly. And so it's such a repeat purchase. But again, we're getting into really helping define the problem. That's what you want to do in problem statements.
You bet. All right, let's jump into the solution.
Metalsome is hair care developed with a cosmetic chemist and professional hairstylists to fight frizz in real-world conditions. Our formulas target the root causes of frizz, humidity, pollution, and heat, delivering results that actually work.
My first thought is, isn't every hair care product developed by a cosmetic chemist and a professional hairstylist?
Yes.
Like, who else would design one?
Well, I could try to design one, but that's not going to go very far, Will.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that, like, any of the products that would be out there would fundamentally be designed by these folks. And I understand that the founder's goal to be able to say, look, we're bringing some credibility to the foundations of this. But I would probably say I would only introduce that as this is who built this if it was unique to how we're getting involved in this process.
Right. Will, I want to pause you for a moment. I'm going to ask you a question because I think, and you're the ad guy, right? Stuff like Metalsome Hair Care is developed cosmetic chemists, professional hairstylists fight frizz in real world conditions. That to me is a statement that I think could go to a customer and they would be like, oh, okay, that's differentiation. But to an investor, it doesn't qualify for exactly what you said. We're looking at this from a completely different angle.
When it says that our formulas target the root causes of frizz, humidity, pollution, and heat, what other root causes would anybody else be targeting?
Right.
What I'm saying is nothing about this feels unique. And this is one of those cases where I'm guessing the product is unique, but this setup doesn't tell me it's unique. And again, when we're talking about $132 billion wildly mature market with massive instantiated players, we're not showing that they did something wrong here. We're basically saying we're using the same process they use to target the same conditions that they target. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's got to be something more magical, more unique about this solution that makes me go, oh shit, that's definitely not what the big boys are doing.
Let me take a stab at this. I'm going back to sort of how I was looking at it. So let's say the problem statement is that even though you spend $132 billion frizz control market everything only lasts 1 month and you have to reapply it every single month. And then you said, we have a new special formula that's designed to last 3 times the amount, 300% improvement, 3 months for just one application. Now you're talking about clearly defining the problem and aligning it with a solution that's unique that solves the problem.
You bet. Let's use deodorant because everybody understands deodorant, hopefully. The current deodorants on the market, I'm making this up. The current deodorants on the market smell awful and they only last 2 hours for most people, which require you to reapply them every 2 to 3 hours if you want to smell reasonable. Our new company, Gillette, now makes a product that you can use for deodorant that lasts the entire day, right? Without any side effects or anything like that. That's the kind of contrast we're looking for. It's a 2-hour window that we're making a 24-hour window or whatever our new window is, but we're isolating it. We're not using generic concerns like overpromise, underdeliver, et cetera, because I can't attach a comparison to that. I can't say, damn, you clearly solved the problem where the current version did not.
Right. And here's a lesson. We'll put this principle for those of you founders who are not in CPG. Anytime you can demonstrate current state sucks and everybody's frustrated, but they're stuck with these solutions right now, and future state, if they used ours, this is how much their life is better, improved. Here's how different it is. If you can contrast, anytime you can do that, that's an extremely powerful thing. Like, for example, Uber. I have to call a phone line and get a taxi and then wait for it, etc.
Go find it. Yeah,
exactly. With Uber, I just stand out on the street. The Uber finds me. It's on my app, pays. I don't have to do a separate thing. That literally is such a stark contrast that everybody gets it in a moment.
At the end of the solution statement, the investor should be thinking in their head, holy shit, everyone's going to buy this. That's exactly what it should. Right there, by the second slide, forget the title slide. By the second slide, when they finish the solution statement, they should say, everyone is going to buy this. Okay. Now that's before they get to how it works, total addressable market, go-to-market strategy, or anything else like that. Because what that is, what the problem and the solution are, when paired properly, you set up the problem to say, everybody is so frustrated with this, and they're spending so much money to solve this problem. And here's why they are so pissed off. We solve exactly that problem. We solve it for half the price here, whatever those pain points are. And we bring people back their time, their confidence, their happiness, whatever it is that we solve for them, their lives are so much better.
Hang on a sec. For those of you who are in the prototype stage and you're ideating, you have to come up with those assumptions, a hypothesis of how much better your solution is going to be. And the more orders of magnitude you can make that solution, the better chance you have of raising funds, because it answers exactly what Will said. Makes an investor go, are you shitting me? Even this may be a pipe dream or it's just outlandish, but if there's plausibility in it, an investor's going to think, okay, it's one of the things we call it hair on the deal, right? It's a really intriguing idea, and it could change the world. No matter how much hair is on the deal, the founder doesn't have the same pedigree. The team's not all there. The traction's not there yet. An investor will come up with ways to imagine a world that is completely transformed if the solution exists, and that's your job as the founder to clearly present that.
Agreed. I always say that really your problem solution statement is the Super Bowl commercial for your company.
Love it.
If you were to run a Super Bowl commercial and you had one shot to tell the world what your product was, the first thing you'd do is you'd connect to your audience by saying, don't you have exactly this problem? And this cracks me up, but this is like the most basic formula for ads, by the way, for any commercial. And where you see it beat to death are ads for pharmaceuticals. Right? Are you suffering from, they don't even try to deviate from the formula, right?
Yeah.
Are you suffering from whatever? Horrible name for a product can solve exactly that. Skip to montage of person so much happier while we read off 10 minutes of product disclosures. And it's so funny because of how restricted they are. And I say this having come from exactly that world. Like our clients at my agency were all the biggest names in pharmaceuticals. I just think it's hilarious. They know the formula works. They stick to it every single time. But because it works, this is exactly why we try to use it here.
I love the Super Bowl commercial analogy. Got a cheeky little comment. Love it. From chat. Have you ever seen a duck ruffled feathers? With ruffled feathers, our patented formula mimics nature's moisture control system to tame your hair. Yeah, exactly. That's talking to the customer. But I just want to be super clear. We want to talk to the investor and give them facts, information that they can make a calculation in their mind that this is a huge opportunity. Here's the how it works slide, Will. This goes right after. And just a heads up, there is a market slide. Typically, we like to see the market slide right after the solution slide. But how it works, order online. So we're going to shop DTC, deliver to your door, apply plus style.
This is the wrong how it works.
Exactly.
This is how every DTC e-commerce site works. It's not what the investor needs to know. What the investor needs to know is, how does the product actually work? How does it function? And once again, incidentally, there's a very specific formula to present this in the 3 steps. And it goes exactly like this. The first step is always introducing what the customer's problem is. Step 1 is the customer's problem. So in this case, we might want to say, Gloria has wildly frizzy hair, right? But she's going to a job interview. Okay, so we're opening up the customer problem. We're using a condition or a case of the customer's problem. Step 2 is she uses the product. And Ed, if you were to jump back to how it works, I just want to see if I can work in exactly what the founder said. Apply in style. Use on wet or dry hair to lock out frizz and protect from heat. Okay, I want to talk about how she applies the product. Is it a spray? Is it a gel? Is it et cetera? And how that product is actually going to control frizz for a longer period of time. So let's say that I'm using Janet. I don't know why her name is Janet. Step 1, Janet has a huge job interview coming up, but her hair is a mess. She needs to be able to control her hair for the next 8 hours. Everything she has available to her won't pull it off. Step 2, she applies this product, meddlesome product, and it locks in control of her hair. It makes her hair perfect for the entire day. Step 3, she walks out of the job interview feeling confident about herself, her appearance, etc., and gets the job. Step 3 is always how, when they use the product, they were actually successful. Ed, people overlook this all the time. They say, hey, they used our product, and they just finish it there. And it's like, okay, did they actually solve their problem? Because that was pretty important. Step 1, set up the problem. Step 2, they use your product. Step 3, they were successful with your product. Works every single time.
And make sure in step 3, this is where the ROI comes in, if that's what's happening, right?
Yeah.
It lasts an extra 90 days, or you don't have to do it the whole time. Your deodorant lasts the whole day versus having to reapply every single time you have a break. But then when you get into products like this, one thing that I found that investors ask for that really helps, I'll give you an example of this, Will, is if you go a little bit and explain the science of it in a way that everybody can understand. Yeah. How about you talk that through?
On step 2, I want to say when Janet applies our cream, let's say, our gel, it actually manages the follicle itself at the scalp level to ensure that frizz doesn't permeate across the hair follicle. I made that up. I have no idea what that even means. But the point is, give me some simple but practical explanation how the formulation of our product has a meaningful differentiation than how if somebody else used a product. So for example, if before you're just treating the hair itself, and again, I'm making all of this up, you're just treating the hair itself, the entire strand, and that doesn't work, that wears off. But if you treat the follicle, that reverberates across the whole strand for a longer period of time. You want to talk about that. Not in detail, just with using our product, it treats the follicle, not the rest of the hair, which allows it to stay frizz-free all day.
Right. And let me just apply this to all the other founders with different types of pitch decks out there. So many founders just take for granted, like it works in their head. And give you an example, as I was talking about, we have a founder and they've got a new way to prepare cannabis that it doesn't get mold, lasts longer, and actually...
Dude, that's a really good company, by the way.
Yeah. So,
that's a big deal. I've worked on that deck.
Has quality, but then when I first encountered the deck, they're like, we have a proprietary process to make weed better. And I said, okay, how does it work? It's our proprietary process. Okay, how does that work? And I literally had to say, explain it to me. And I didn't know, are there machines involved? And so first they set up and said, Ed, did you know that everybody else has to hang dry their weed in these huge warehouses that take extra amount of time and all this cost? I said, I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know as the investor. Now they're using freeze drying. And I'm like, well, what is that? It's like a machine, this and that. So they started breaking it down in a way that investors could approach the science without having to be scientists. And that's the same thing with every other pitch deck, Will. It doesn't matter if it's a software, an LLM, whatever AI, break it down in a way that we go from problem to, hey, this is the great fairy tale ending that we promised, and help people understand what's happening in between those steps.
If I were to take, I'm going to make this up for the first time. We've never done this before on the show. If I were to take the Startups.com problem and I were to try to apply the same formula, I would say something to the effect of this, and I'm making up a problem statement on the fly.
Okay.
40 million people every year start a company worldwide, which is true, by the way.
Yes.
Right? They put all of their heart and soul and their life savings into this one idea, but none of them know what they're doing. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand product. They don't understand fundraising, et cetera. And 99% of them will fail.
Which is true.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Startups.com works directly with founders to explain every single thing that they don't know. They help successfully fundraise for the company, help them build exactly the product they're supposed to build, et cetera, at a fraction of the time and cost that they would otherwise do it. And I just made that up. And that's not a perfect problem statement. It's a little bit wordy, et cetera. But what I'm trying to focus on when I think about problem and solution, Ed, is the fact that if they don't get this right, their world is destroyed. Right. And I say this to say everyone on this call right now or that's going to watch this video, et cetera, knows that they're putting everything they have into something. And they know if they don't get the help that they need, that it could absolutely fail. There's consequence there. There's feeling there. And we're building these problem solution statements. We're doing how it works, et cetera. I want to feel what the audience feels, what the customer feels. Janet, the person whose name I made up in the how it works, I want to feel her frustration. I want to feel the consequence and gravity of what happens in her day when this problem affects her. And I think this deck so far just isn't doing that, but it can.
Let's use your example, Will. I think it's a good exercise. So now apply your formula of the how it works to your Startups.com example.
Yeah. Ed Kang is starting his first company. He's got a million questions and he has to be an expert on everything all at once. He's frustrated. Ed comes to Startups.com and he has a professional advisor specifically explain how to set up his marketing, how to fundraise, and how to build his product. Step 3, Ed lands his funding. He builds his product in half the time, and he builds an expert marketing plan that starts to grow his revenue in a fraction of the time.
Perfect. So that's very simple. Now, if you wanted, let's say you have some special sauce. Let's say we built an AI for this because that's what we're doing. Then you could add in the interim steps, or you could explain, Ed signs up and submits all his information, uploads his pitch deck or his business plan, and then he gets a customized report and then meets with an advisor and it has all his questions answered and raises his funding in half the time. Really simple.
That's the whole point. But the key to it is showing Ed's consequence, right? Showing that if Ed doesn't get this right, Ed being the customer, that his life will get upended. Now, not everything has to be, my life is over. And a lot of people will say this. And again, I used to run a large ad agency in the first part of my career. And I would go to customers, our clients, and I would say, our job is to make your customer's problem the biggest problem in their life when they hear about your product. Right. And so our creative campaigns and our ad campaigns would be designed to pull that thread for a customer, be able to say, isn't this a big problem that you have? And make you go, well, I didn't even know that was a problem, but now it is. You see this right now when you go through your social media feeds, and good ads will do this. Good ads will show up. Everyone's is completely personalized. Mine, apparently, Ed, you're going to think this is so funny. I am nonstop bombarded for ads for t-shirts that make old guys look good. I've never seen so many products that talk about, hey, fat old guy. You know how much better you look in this one t-shirt from some random company you've never heard about? And I love it. I love it because someone behind the scenes is doing ads properly, right? They're looking at it saying, I understand as guys get older, they're concerned about their appearance, and they want to believe that it's just the shirt. It's not the fact that you never go to the gym. It's the fact that you're buying the wrong shirts. And I love that, right? So my point here is good ads are similar to good pitch decks. They attack the problem head on, and they make the person go, yes, that's exactly how I feel.
And the more that you demonstrate that you understand your customer and how urgent that problem is and how much it's worth, remember, going back to what Will said, tell it to me in dollars and say, holy crap, if we're spending billions of dollars on this now, man, we just solved this issue. We are all in the money. That's important, which leads us to the market size. This is Medicine will initially target a $540 million market, expanding into the 132 global total addressable market. So the entry market is 540 style conscious women, US age 25-45. We got a bunch of qualifiers there. And then the total addressable market is positioned to the 132 global frizz control market, encompassing 1.65 billion women. Will, I know this founder, kudos to this founder, really trying to follow our formula to set this up, but what are your comments in terms of what was actually said here?
Well, a couple things concern. I like the overall approach because I know it follows our formula. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what our formula is, it basically said when you do your market size, say this is the market we're starting with because we're raising a small amount of money and we have to have an entry point somewhere. And then this is the bigger market. And really the narrative you're trying to tell with this slide, which this helps in that capacity, is the first market we're going to go after, our entry market, is the lowest hanging fruit. Okay. It's like we're selling iPhones to the people standing in line around the corner for when the next iPhone comes out. If we can't sell to this market because of these reasons, then we're screwed. But if we can sell to these folks and people are rabid about buying our product, holy cow, here's how big that market could get. Now, as an investor, Ed, tell me how you feel. I don't see the left side of that entry market as being all that different than the right side of the market. So we're saying women 25 to 45. I'm not really sure why they would be more likely to buy. I could say maybe they're a little bit younger and they care more about their looks, maybe. Living in human comments, that one I get. And they're spending $80 annually on frizz control. But Ed, what I'm not sure about is that sounds almost identical to the right side of the equation, which is also the same thing. They're almost saying the same thing. What's your thought?
You're absolutely right. Everyone, listen, a segment in your market does not indicate that you have a strategic advantage, an insight, it's low-lying fruit, any reason to go after that, where I can say that I did understand, and you could have boiled this down if this is in fact the case, is humid climates. Let's say there are X amount of million women, we don't even have to put age, living in these humid climates where they spend the most on these products and respond the best to our go-to-market strategy. That's something I can buy into.
Yep. I mean, the first thing that jumped out at me was humid climates. I would take it a step further. I would say we're targeting a very specific niche customer, a professional customer in the most humid climates, because they actually have to, by definition, control this problem because they have a consequence being their appearance in a professional setting. Again, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that if you're not in a professional setting that this isn't meaningful to you. I'm just saying I can target those people. That's a very specific demographic that I can target. And as an investor, whenever I hear you say, I know how to find my customer, I'm way more excited.
Let me give you an example. And this, again, I'm contextualizing for everybody else with different types of pitch decks. Will, we were raising money for an ed tech platform. And it was really anybody who wanted to go and get a master's and a doctoral degree in a specific thing. That's everybody. You sell to everybody, you sell to nobody. We don't want to boil an ocean. So we said our initial segment are people who are in directorial positions that need to have some type of credential to get promoted to an executive position at a higher level because they're the ones influencing our market, and we have the best chance of convincing them to spend the money because the ROI is a lot higher, and that's what will lead us to having influence for the rest of the market. And the investors are like, that's a perfect strategy. We had no pushback whatsoever.
I love when there are dedicated communities that you can go after early. Okay, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of people, particularly in CPG, that tend to have products dedicated toward parents and in some cases moms. So when someone says we're initially going to go after Facebook Moms Group or something like that, that's highly specific, where I can picture you targeting those people, buying ads specifically to them and finding them easily, I love that as a starting place. I also love that because whenever we're saying, look, there are whole Reddits, there's subreddits dedicated to how pissed off people are with this problem, and we're going to go after those subreddits first, I'm like, perfect. Those are people raising their hands saying, sell me your damn product. That's what I want to go after.
On top of what Will said, everyone, just make sure you quantify that. So tell me how many users are on that subreddit and how you've got the perfect formula to segment your market and explain where you're going to focus. So to this founder, we say, apply that logic and let's really hone in on this because an investor is really going to think about that. And on top of which, Will, CPG, all investors immediately think it's very expensive to promote CPG products. So if you're just trying to boil a segment of a very large ocean, investors are going to worry all my money is just going to be going to the abyss and it's not going to be effective.
Yep, I agree.
Go-to-market strategy. Here we go. Okay, so we've got these 4 sections and a lot of bullet points from target customer, launch channels, execution team, initial focus. Right away, Will, how's an investor going to respond to this?
Many of these categories, not unique. Okay. So when you say our launch channels will be D2C, e-commerce, influencer, and UGC, paid social advertising, you just described every single product launching in CPG.
Right.
What you want to be able to talk about in your go-to-market strategy is what we're going to do differently than everybody else, not what we're going to do. And I think that's a really important distinction that gets lost over and over and over. So again, when you say, hey, we're going to be DTC e-commerce on Shopify, you just described almost every vendor on Shopify. Nothing unique. And I do this program with middle schoolers where I teach entrepreneurship at my kids' middle school. And in that program, one of the classes is dedicated toward marketing. And I say, listen, you guys all have these great ideas for products, and it's so much fun to develop these with all the students. And I say, now it's time to talk about how you're going to promote this. And I want to know what channels, and I explain to them roughly what channels are. Every single student, mind you, these are 5th through 8th graders in this particular group. Every single student is like, we're going to advertise with Mr. Beast and on the Super Bowl. Like, wow, that's aggressive, right? But there's no limits in this class. Okay,
they know what's going on,
right? But what I liked about what they said is they said Mr. Beast because he's the biggest, Super Bowl because it's the biggest, and everyone says we're going to do a collab. We're going to do a collab with Taylor Swift. Okay, cool. I mean, but what I like about it is it's highly specific. Here's what none of them say, and I want to say this: we're going to use social media. Like they assume it's social media. Right? They assume you're going to be on YouTube. They're specifically saying we're going after Mr. Beast, right? They don't say we're going to work with celebrities. They say we're going to work with this specific celebrity, Taylor Swift. Now, they don't understand budgets and I don't care. But what I like about what they do, and this is different than call it adults. Adults will say, we'll use social media marketing. Kids will say, Of course, you're going to use social media marketing. That's a default. Here's which social media marketing channels we're going to use. They don't even think twice about segmenting and being specific.
Let me double click on that, Will, and use another CPG as an example. It's important. So we're looking at the execution team, and we see that there's going to be a company doing branding and website design. Well, of course, that's something we take for granted, right? Let's just boil it down. Every CPG company is going to need a brand.
The key when you're going to launch a product and promote a company brand, the first thing you want to do is remember the brand. I learned that in my agency days, that an important part of every commercial is knowing what client you're actually making the commercial for.
Yeah.
This
So
is just busting your balls.
yeah. Well, but you bring up a great point. It's just you make it memorable. And what brands have to do is they have to separate themselves out. And it's possible to do so and explain something you take for granted branding, and everybody has to do it. But let's use, I remember now, Liquid Death. All right. Liquid Death. They said our branding is going to be irreverent. We're putting water in cans, not plastic. Right. And it's going to be targeting people with a slogan, death to plastic. And we're going to put like just irreverent images on it. Now you basically said, yes, we are going to do branding, but we're going to do it in a way, to your point, Will, that's different than everybody else. And that's so key, especially in CPG.
You know, it's funny you should say that because that actually came up. So let me be specific. One of our founders for another product that not what we're covering today has a really good idea to do packaged ice. You've talked to this founder before.
Oh yeah, love him.
And I said, you know, a buddy of mine might be interested in this. A buddy of mine happened to be one of the investors in Liquid Death, and he's actually on the board. And so I emailed him and I said, hey, Mike, what do you think about this packaged ice? And he said, is it in plastic? And I said, yeah. He's like, I'm out.
Wow.
Pause right there.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay.
Right? He didn't say, tell me more, send me the whole deck, like connect me with the founder. He just said, is it in plastic? And I said, yes. He said, I'm out. Now, when you think about that, you're like, wait, this guy has, made $1 gazillion off this investment in Liquid Death. Like, why wouldn't he look at another CPG? Because he has a bias. He was successful with water going into a can versus plastic, and now he just wants can versus plastic. Do you see what I'm saying? Like
totally.
And every investor has a tremendous bias as to what's worked with them in the past. And so this founder didn't even get the chance to present to him, which I think is a miss. But I only say this to say, when you're out there and you're pitching investors and you can't understand why they're not, resonating, whatever, don't overthink it. Some people just have a simple bias on a simple thing, and that's it.
Will, on top of which, don't chase them and try to convince them.
That's what I'm saying.
If it's not for them, it's not for them. Move along. And there are so many different investors with different investment theses all over the place. And you just have to find the right one. So don't waste your time feeling bad, going, no, wait, what do I need to change? And let me chase you down and beg you. Just move on and find the investor that goes, I get it. That's what I'm into.
And that's what I told the founder. He's like, well, maybe I could explain to him a version where we could put it in metal. I was like, nope, don't bother. Your job isn't to change the product to meet the investor. Your job is to find the investor that fits your product.
Right. Especially if your idea is already validated with customers. You got some validated traction. Yeah. Don't worry about what investors say. Will, this has been good. I think we've given this founder a lot to work through right in the beginning, because problem solution market is going to be the mainstay, the crux of your deck. If you're looking at this deck, what other advice, how could we wrap this up to tell this founder how to approach this next version of the deck?
The simplest version is this. You forgot to tell the audience the essence of why your product works better, okay? And if it's further in the deck, it doesn't matter, because if you haven't told the story by now, no one's going to look at the rest of the deck. This is a perfect example of a great founder, a great product, a great market telling the wrong story. And Ed, we see this all the time. And this is most of what we see if we're being honest.
Oh, yeah.
And but that's why we're here. That's literally why we make these videos. That's why Startups.com exists and everything else like that, is to be able to have great founders with great products tell great stories. And to do that, it takes a ton of iteration. And that's fine. That's what we're here for.
It's very clear that this founder is thoughtful and has thought through all the mechanics that go into the startup. Like if you look at all the details, and I actually talked to this founder today, and she said, I'm going to be doing this. And I was like, oh yeah, that's actually a really great idea. And so highly, highly coachable, really intent on execution. I can't say this enough. The first impression has been really great, but not coming across in this deck, like Will said. Will, this has been really great. So for everybody else out there, what's your final word in encouraging people with what to do right from now?
I want you to separate, I have a good idea, from I'm pitching this well, okay? I want you to step back from yourself as all founders and be able to say, look, I'm so pumped about my idea, but I do understand that I can have a badass idea that's being pitched totally poorly. I can have a great product in the wrong packaging. Help me build good packaging. And I know this is a phenomenal founder. I've talked to her as well. She's the kind of founder that will step back and take ego off of it and say, look, man, I just have a great product. Help me put it in the right packaging. When you take that ego off the table and just say, tell me how to build great packaging, you're going to wind up with a good package. When you get a founder that said, no, I know the packaging regardless of et cetera, and they wind up putting a great idea in the wrong package, it never gets sold. And that frustrates me, but that's what we're here to help.
This brings me back to my initial comment and question to you, Will. Sometimes founders go, I can't believe you're breaking apart my pitch deck and giving me this critique and all that stuff. All we're doing is getting you to step back and say, hey, maybe another perspective would help. And if it still ends up with your perspective, that's great. At least you've gone through the exercise to make sure and do it properly. So, Will, I totally agree and appreciate the way that you approach everything. I'm learning from you all the time on that. I hope everybody else has learned some good stuff. Hey, like I said, if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, appreciate it. Most of all, if you learn something, share it with another founder. We want you to spread this information out there. Will, last word to you.
Last word is this. If you watch every single one of these pitch deck review videos, the one thing you'll never see us do is criticize someone's idea. We actually isolate the idea and say the idea could be the best or worst. Our job in these videos is to show you how to package the idea better. Honestly, even if it's a terrible idea, we still want to give you better packaging for the idea. But our frustration is when we see a great idea with bad packaging. And so when you're learning from this, just like Ed said, if you're learning how to package the idea better, the only way you can really, really help us out and compliment us is go help another founder do the same.
Love it. All right, Will, always a pleasure. I'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, friends.